Forest went away to Stamford Bridge to play Chelsea in their what is becoming a dreaded away game fixture for Forest, and was certainly not fancied by the fans. Even our Forest favourite pundits, Paul Merson and Sutton, again put Forest down for a loss, both 1-0 and 2-0 respectively. So let's take apart Forest's insane defensive masterclass versus Chelsea. And is this sustainable? You can see why people predicted a Forest loss, as Forest last won away at Southampton in January, and that was their only win of last season. But more importantly, we were playing against a £1 billion Chelsea. And this is the amount that Chelsea spent over the last 3 years in the transfer windows, £1 billion. But Cooper sent the team in with a fight them on the beaches mentality, or should I say, the bridge.
We will fight them on the beaches.
So this is how the team's set up, with Chelsea being a 3-4-2-1, very narrow at the top, and Forest being a 5-4-1. But this is how it played out on the pitch, with Sterling for Chelsea pushing alongside Jackson up front on the right-hand side, and Danilo and Morgan Gibbs-White kind of joining Taiwo up front. And Forest were determined to crowd the ball, as you can see here, and preferring to play fast on the break against a pushed high Chelsea attack. This does bring another point. Why don't Chelsea like playing against the low block? Well, they prefer to counter rather than have lots of Man City type possession further up the pitch. And they brought in Caicedo to try and improve this with his long ball on the counter-attack to the fast-forward players. Just look at his stats against all European players in the same position. Green is good, by the way. During the game, Forest watched Caicedo like a hawk, even from a goal kick or a throw-in, not allowing him to play in that deep, lying playmaker role. And he made a lot of mistakes during the game. So why else don't Chelsea like playing against low-block teams? Well, they've played a 4-2-3-1 for most of last season, but they did alternate that a little bit with a 3-back and 2 wing-backs. And I have to say, against Forest, it was a surprise to me that they went with the 3 centre-backs, knowing Forest's away frailties. And this is what a lot of Chelsea fans are annoyed about. With Chelsea lining up with a narrow pivot to start the game, with Fernandes and Sterling behind Sorry, Miss Jackson, woo, who seems to have a lot of pressure on him this year as their main striker. And undeservedly so, in my opinion, which we'll go through later. In the match, Sterling pushed up on average ahead of Jackson. I'm not doing it again. Another key area that you'll see from these clips is that number 23 Gallagher never got forward much, and his average position was level with Caicedo, the defensive midfielder. So look at this. This left Jackson isolated a lot of the time against Worrell and McKenna. And like I said, Jackson is getting a lot of stick from Chelsea fans, but apart from that terrible miss, I have to say his teammates around him are awful in terms of support. Forest just closed them down all over the pitch, time after time after time. A shout out here for Worrell, Bolly, McKenna and Yates, who absolutely won their defensive duels by a long, long way. And that was the main reason that Forest won this game. Now you can see on this graphic, you can see the red in the penalty area, which means that Forest won the majority of the duels there. So you can see that all over the pitch. But if you look in the 18-yard box, that's where Forest won the massive duels. And that's what kept the attacks and the shots down, with only really 2 shots on target for Chelsea. Now, it may have looked like an ultra low block, and it certainly did first time I saw it. But when I watched it back on Sunday, doing the clips of this analysis, I did notice that there was a greater spread from Forest from the last defender to Taiwo. There was another 10 yards difference than a much narrower Chelsea attack. And I think it's that killed them. They tried to attack as a small group, quite tight together, and they just kept running through the forward wall, the midfield wall, and then finally the defensive wall. So overall, the Forest shape wasn't that deep a lot of the time, other than the last 10 minutes where they literally camped everybody behind the ball. And the clips here show the pressing from the front and also the mid-block. This is certainly different from pre-Brennan Johnson. I know Brennan Johnson's only just gone, but it's definitely different because what the Forest counter-attack relied on there is a long ball out of defence, a low percentage long ball at that, straight out to the right wing to Jono. And obviously with it being a low percentage and relying just on his pace, the chances were limited. So now with Johnson's pace out of the team, Cooper actually changed it, and it was very apparent that he did change it. And I didn't see a long ball for the vast majority of the game. It was all on the floor, like the good old days of Forest, right? There were passes along the floor, but very progressive. And whenever Forest won the ball, either in defence or midfield, there was players sprinting to get into the attack. Mainly the likes of NGW and Aina, and the forwards, obviously. But even the likes of Yates was getting up fast in the attack. And this is what Forest relied on. But it wasn't a long ball all the time. It was definitely playing through the lines as quick as possible. So with Jono in the side, Forest definitely progressed more down the right-hand side, and it really flipped this game because most of Forest possession was down that left-hand side, with Aina overlapping with MGW. So Forest scored a great goal from a counter-attack, with the Chelsea team really looking a little jaded, and they look like statues as a one-year nutmeg silver, beautiful, to put Alanga through for the calm finish. Chelsea immediately changed their shape to a 4-1-4-1 and pushed higher up the pitch, and was definitely told to play the ball wide wherever possible to try and take advantage of the sole Forest wing-backs. And they were overlapping more. And this is where Chelsea got more joy. This meant that the Chelsea wing-backs pushed on and overloaded the wide spaces. There was also a lot more support for Jackson in the second half, as you can see from these clips. Where he was isolated in the first half, they were definitely told to get up alongside him in this half. But Forest stayed strong and motivated at the back, with an absolutely outstanding display of defending, only switching off once where Jackson had an open goal, but fluffed his lines.
Oh.
Chelsea then finally tried one more thing, and they pushed forward with a new 4-4-2, and it did create some opportunities for Forest on the counter, showing the desire to win the ball and sprint out. Alanga started here in the second half, being a real thorn in the side of the Chelsea defence. So what's next for both Forest and Chelsea? And is the Forest counter-attacking system sustainable? Well, Steve Cooper has announced in his post-match that the tactics need to adapt with a more progressive formations and tactics. And you can see that with who they've signed in the window. Covering all the positions in the window, Forest were obviously lacking in a CDM and really ball-playing defenders for me. And their marquee signing, Sangare, who left the Champions League team to come and play for Steve Cooper, filling that elusive number 6 position that Forest have been crying out for since the Huon days. They played Freuler in that position during most of last season, and that just isn't the position he plays for Switzerland. As you can see from the stats, the player comparison is wide, with 3 sets of stats here: passing, possession stats, and defensive stats, and they are a world apart. So Forest have signed a real marquee signing there in that position. Murillo was one of 2 new centre-backs coming in, and I think personally, it's a personal feeling, I think, I did a clip highlight reel of him, and his passing from the back is astronomical. It's certainly the best since Dawson at Forest, if not even better. So we could be seeing one of the best ball-playing defenders that we've had since I can remember, and I've been supporting since the age of 7. So Sangare protecting, potentially a back 4, and then Murillo pinging those balls out when Forest are under pressure to counter with a long ball, but a higher percentage chance of that long ball hitting. I still see Cooper playing with the same approach, defensive style, when they're playing the top 6, if you like, and awkward away fixtures. But I, for one, look forward to seeing a more progressive approach in certainly home games and games against the weaker clubs. So what about Chelsea? Their fans are pissed off.
I'm at a loss for words. What is going on at my football club? Fucking embarrassing. Week on week with the same shit. It doesn't matter what we do.
It's like last season, all over again. Let's have all the possession, guys.
They want a 4-2-3-1 in the main, and Pochettino will have to figure out how to break down a defensive side like Forest, as some teams travelling to the bridge this season like Luton, Sheffield United, Bournemouth, Everton, and a stack of others might see the Forest result as a great blueprint.
Are we so fucking shit? This club has been opened up more than Logan Paul's wife in the space of a year. I don't think there's a single doctor that can cure my mental illness, because this football is scarring.
That's all for the video. Remember to subscribe and like, and goodbye.